Hello everybody. As YouTubers, we get a lot of information about the people who watch our videos and the content that you enjoy. So, I know that you all really like a Jag, and oh boy, have I got a treat for you this week. This is the F-Type Project 7, named for Jaguar's 7 victories at Le Mans and styled to reference one of their most famous racers, the D-Type. There are two things I particularly like about the Project 7. First off, this was no mere concept, they really built it. 250 of them, in fact. Secondly, unlike many of the recent no-roof special editions, this wasn't priced stratospherically. Mortals could afford it. I could afford one. The car was the first to come from Jaguar's then new SVO department, Special Vehicle Operations. It debuted as a single-seater prototype at Goodwood in 2014, being released in production guise a year later. At £135,000, there are two simple ways to see this car, either as a vastly overpriced and less practical F-Type, or as something considerably rarer and more special than a Ferrari California for a lot less money. Happily, for those who forked out on one, the changes were more than just skin deep. Up front, you have the familiar 5-litre supercharged Jaguar V8, producing for the first time 575 horsepower, 513 pound-foot of torque, that's 700 newton meters, and that's enough to get this car from 0 to 60 in less than 4 seconds and onto a top speed of 186 miles an hour. That's limited, with no roof. The car's weight is a little bit trickier to pin down. We figure it's around the 1600 kilo mark, making it around 85 kilos lighter than a regular F-Type convertible. More impressive than that though were the changes made to the chassis. The top mounts are different, the suspension knuckles are different for added camber, the anti-roll bars are different, and the front springs are 80% stiffer than the regular ones. The rears just 8% more. I think the reasoning for that being they wanted to give this car a really aggressive turn-in, but not unsettle the back end too much. Alongside the new engine map, both the gearbox and steering were also updated. The car received carbon ceramic brakes as standard and is notable for being the only F-Type to ever receive the combination of the 575 horsepower engine and rear-wheel drive. You do actually get the option of a roof with these cars, though it's a more Caterham-style canvas affair. Allegedly, it is safe up to 120 miles an hour, but as you might imagine, is a little bit of a faff. And if you're caught in the rain, it's just not going to be particularly pleasant. This car is in what's for me the only colour combination of British racing green with white roundels on the side. Like my shoes. This car has been brought to me by its kind owner and Jagman David, who's been on the hunt for one for a little while, but noticed in the last few months that prices were on the rise, so decided to get one while he still could. He is certain this is destined to be a future classic, and one of the reasons for that, he says, is the way that it drives. Time then to see if I agree. Now, I'm sure it is technically possible to not be happy whilst driving a Jag, but when we're talking about an F-Type Project 7 on a day like today, even the fact my camera behind has gone all squiffy and wonky will not dissuade me from being a very, very happy chappy. This is a hell of a car. First things first, it looks the part, this thing. It's spectacular. No, it may not have quite as many bespoke features as the later Project 8, but it's no less impressive for it. It's wonderful. I also love the fact that yes, there is a clear nod to the D-Type in the name and this bit behind me, but beyond that it hasn't turned into a sickening nostalgia fest, which is very easy for some of these cars to wind up as. This is still a modern car, just with a couple of old school touches. Anybody who's been near a common or garden variety F-Type will certainly recognise a lot of the ingredients that make up this car. The interior is the one place this doesn't perhaps feel quite as bespoke as I think it could. The black leather is a rather disappointing choice for me. It just isn't special enough. It's still very, very nice, but I think they could have done a little bit more. What exactly, I don't know, and I appreciate that's not very helpful. I do, though, really like the very steeply raked windscreen, which is not the same as in the regular F-Type convertible or coupe. It is bespoke to the Project 7 and worth noting for customers in the USA, something they did not get. This car also has a special place in Jaguar history all of its own. As the first product to come from SVO, it essentially set the template for the SVR which came after. I'm sure you're as keen as I am to find out just what this car is like when you give it the big one. Up until now, I've been in drive with comfort mode engaged, but let's go into dynamic, put it over into sport, and then manual gear change, and let's go. Jesus, it's loud. It's really quite quick, this thing. Whoa. A few months ago, I said I drove the angriest of the F-Types. I am a liar. This is the angriest of the F-Types. In fact, I think it may be one of the angriest cars I've ever driven. Where do we begin? Well, let's start with the noise. I've often criticised the old V8 F-Type for being a little bit too much. And this is too much, but in this package, it kind of feels right. The sound is straight from the depths of hell, because that exhaust is the noise of Beelzebub with a rather nasty case of hay fever. Usually, particularly in, say, the coupe, you don't quite notice just how raucous these cars are. In this, there's no escaping it. Bloomin' heck. You also must respect and cannot escape the fact it's still rear-wheel drive. Press on at the exit of a bend and the car will kick. Happily, these P0s are actually doing a pretty good job. David, like myself, is not a big fan of Pirellis, and he did as best he could to try and find something that suited the car, which wasn't one of those. Unfortunately, his search proved fruitless, but the internet suggested he try a set of these, P0 PZ4s, apparently the equivalent of the Michelin Pilot Sport 4. I have to say, they seem to be doing a reasonably good job. You have to respect the fact it's not a flyweight. That is an issue when you get into the bend, and it has oodles of power and torque available from next to no RPM. That is an issue when you come out of the bend. Stop thinking of this car perhaps so much in Italian terms and more American ones, it suddenly starts to make a lot of sense. The bite on that upshift, those cracks! Oh! It also, in its defense, isn't quite as predictable as in, say, a Lamborghini Huracan. That's just annoying because you get the exact same 5 pops every time, just like in a Golf R. Pop-a-da-pop-pop. That's a Lambo on the upshift. Pop-a-da-pop-pop. Every time. Every single time. Mercifully, there is a button down here which somewhat tames the exhaust. I've now pressed that and it has become a lot more subtle. In fact, as we're in town now, I'll turn the car back into comfy mode, put it back in drive and see how well it performs in your average small British town. Predictably, the combination of thumping great big V8 with a supercharger on it and the 8-speed ZF box mean that around town it is absolutely effortless. Visibility is generally pretty good. Naturally, with the roof down, there's not really much to get in your way. However, the bonnet is very large, over there somewhere, and pretty difficult to place. Fortunately, I have both experience of these things and a camera stuck on the end of the car, so I'm cheating just a little bit. I have to say, I've just caught a view of myself in the camera there, and that looks sensational, doesn't it? Absolutely amazing. It's also not too breezy in here. You can do big miles in this car relatively easily, provided it doesn't rain. Around town, the carbon ceramic brakes are not grabby, they're very intuitive. Pedal feel is decent, the gearbox is smooth and refined, the engine is quiet, very tractable. Fuel economy, not so great. Over the last 2,000 and a bit miles, the car has averaged 17. I would say, though, that it has been enjoyed. This car is, in fact, sat on just below 4,000 miles in total, so I am particularly grateful to David, who's one of these people that enjoys and cherishes his car, but also makes sure to use it properly. We need more people like that. It's on little sections like this where the car does feel particularly broad and difficult. This is not really Project 7 specific, this is just an F-Type, and to be fair, many modern sports cars, but seems worth noting. These seats I really rather like. The carbon backs are gorgeous, the shape of them works for me, they're comfortable and supportive, but they are that odd sort of combo of manual and electric. I've never understood manufacturers that make lightweight carbon bucket seats and then put heavy motors in them. Aston Martin do the same. This, if you want to go forward and backwards, that's manual, but the tilt for the backrest and the base is all electric. Why? What's the point? Even in drive and normal mode, the car is quite keen to kick down. Notably, when you've got the exhaust in its more subtle setting, you also get a bit more supercharger whine come through, which I quite enjoy. The valves in that exhaust still open at about 3,500 RPM regardless, so if you're a sort of shy retiring type, this is probably not the car for you. One element of this car I have yet to discuss is the suspension, and that's because it's a bit of a surprise. When you see on any vehicle spring rates having been increased by 80%, you can't help but wonder if the end result is going to be anything other than thoroughly unpleasant. Yet here now, in drive mode, I would be lying if I said this was cosseting, soft and wafty, like say an XF or an XJ. But it does have a bit of that classic Jag suppleness about it. You can certainly feel the road surface, you know what's going on, but I'm not suffering for it. I know it doesn't really seem like it, and it's a little bit pointless, but if you do simply want to just bimble along, the car will do it. Turning circle's even really very good. Just about the one thing I really don't like about this car right now is the steering wheel. With an interior that is all leather and carbon fibre, I don't know why they chose to put Alcantara here. This is the one place I definitely don't want it. Ah! So, another clear bit of road ahead, only fair to have another blast. Even in the dynamic mode, it still doesn't feel overly stiff. The turn-in is really good. Steering is decent, but not brilliant. I had some hopes that perhaps they'd done something particular for this car and just given it that next level of feel and feedback. That being said, the feel is still there. This is a hydraulic rack. Later F-Types went electric, this one did not. It's got a very nice weighting to it. It's progressive, it's intuitive, it doesn't take you by surprise. And this is a car you can pilot with reasonable confidence very quickly. The brakes I do enjoy. You need a relatively firm shove of the pedal. I haven't had to ask too much from them yet. Let's just test them, shall we? Yep, they're decent. Car pivots a little bit to the side, follows the camber of the road, but not daunting, not scary. I like it. The gearbox, again, not what I call excellent, but more than good enough to enjoy in auto or manual mode. There's just a moment's delay on the up and down shifts, but never enough really to worry about. The paddles themselves are a touch disappointing. They're not very big. I wish they were a little bit more theatrical. I also can't help but wonder if Jaguar had made this in a manual, people would probably be paying a lot more for them. And on that note, I suppose, time to deliver my verdict. In some ways, this car reminds me a little bit of the Impreza 22B. That was by far the best Impreza I ever drove, but it was still an Impreza. And this is like that. This is the most entertaining F-Type I have ever driven. But it's not an F-Type times 10, it's an F-Type plus 20, plus 30%. It looks spectacular. It's a gorgeous thing to behold. It is a piece of art. I can understand anyone who would buy one. And in the current market, they're commanding reasonably little. 125 to 150,000 pounds apparently will get you one. This means they're trading at roughly their original list price. And if you look at anything else of this ilk, that's cheap. When you take into account the effort that went into building the car, the limited numbers, I think that's a very fair price. In fact, let's just take a moment to appreciate quite how remarkable the pricing of the Project 7 is. In the last few years, we've seen a laundry list of no-roof specials appear, and most of them come with an eye-watering price tag. The McLaren Elva is essentially a 720S without a roof and costs £1.4 million. They even tried to sell more of them than Jaguar did the Project 7. That is until they realised nobody was that stupid. I'm sure it's ludicrously fast and, like most McLarens, brilliant to drive, but still, it's not good value. Ferrari's Monza SP1 and SP2 share many components with the 812, and the hardtop GTS variant of that car would set you back £400,000 if you went absolutely nuts with the configurator. But the no roof at all Monza is another £1 million and more. The Bentley Bacala has the underpinnings of a Continental GT, and though it is genuinely rare, with just 12 being made, it also has a price tag of £1.5 million, plus VAT. The Aston Martin V12 Speedster seems like good value by comparison, just 850 grand for the privilege of looking like a Burke should you actually be brave enough to drive the car, which you won't be. Even at the sensible end of a silly marketplace, the 911 Speedster cost over £200,000 and now trades for even more. This all makes the Jaguar look like sensationally good value for money, new and used. It is special, but not so special you'll never dare to drive it. This is the same price as a new 911 Targa GTS, and it puts a much bigger smile on your face. There may have been a temptation, or perhaps even an expectation from some, that with the looks of this thing, it would be a hardcore track day special, borderline unenjoyable on the road. But I'm glad that Jaguar decided to play it a little bit safe and still build something you could really enjoy on a day like today. Because if this was stiff as you like, I wouldn't be enjoying it as much. That description, I think, might more accurately fit the Project 8, which David also owns. And I'm driving tomorrow. Haha, I told you it was going to be a good week for Jag fans. If you want to know more about a Project 7, I suppose I should recommend Harry's Garage, just in case you haven't heard of it and aren't aware of the fact he owns one of these, and a Project 8 too. In fact, he was involved with Jaguar's SVO department when this car was being made. Anyway, that's enough from me, I think. I have really enjoyed the Project 7, and I think David could be right about this becoming a future classic. It wouldn't be the first time either that a car which is a bit better than normal goes on to command a lot more. Thanks to him for bringing it out. Thanks to you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.